So let's just go back like the beginning. The beginning. Actually, there was no beginning. Sorry. Before the beginning, the time of no time. Like, can you imagine that? Like, just no time. We can only imagine time. We can only imagine this sun, this a life that is ordered and constrained by things. But there was a time when there was no time. There was a time called eternity before. And that's where Jesus was. It says in John 1, verses 1 to 4, in the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. This Word is Jesus. Jesus in the beginning. Jesus before everything. Jesus existing with God. Jesus is God, creating, breathing life, giving light and life to everything. This is the Jesus that we celebrate at Christmas. Before he was in heaven with God. Before he was this baby on earth, he was ruling equal to God. He was the source of life and light. The angels bowed down to him. He was creator of the Word. He was a creator as the Word that spoke in the darkness. And that same creation can't help but glorify. I love Psalm 19. It talks about how the heavens proclaiming the glory of God, that the sky is displaying his craftsmanship, that the whole of creation, as Jeff said this morning, the rocks can't help but cry out if we don't. That the whole of creation just has this need, this sense to worship him. Every sunrise, every sunset is a worship of Lord Creator. And we get this picture all through the Psalms of this king receiving honor that's due to him as creator, as Lord. And sometimes we kind of, I think in our culture we get a bit confused because we find honor hard to understand. We find worship and glory hard to accept, to see it displayed, to see, to watch it happening. I think, C.S. Lewis, the author, he says we've lost the art of solemnity. It's an old word, old English, and we've kind of lost this sense of the occasion of solemn mixed with feast and celebration. Solemnity is not dreary. It's not severe and austere. But solemnity is not just abandonment to everything and just, over the top with no foundation, no base behind it. We need this ability to find a Jesus that fits into a space where knees will bow down and hearts will raise up. In our culture today, we look for a false display of humility in a place where actually there should be honor. We get frustrated and confused at the coronations of kings and things like that because it jars against all sorts of things in us. And we forget the place that there is a space for honor. There is a space for glory. It's maybe not supposed to be a man, but it's a depiction of what it should be like. Like we need a picture of what honor and glory is like. And so, we need to find this picture of Jesus in heaven, this stately, this ceremonial, mixed with an incredible joy and celebration and worship. Remove the guilty feelings of splendor. Remove the extravagance and the excessive finances that we think of. Like, just kind of wipe that away. This is Jesus. Like, he is the source of all. And this, when we find this, we kind of wipe this all away. We get this picture, this wonder of the King, the wonder of the true King, where we can come into this presence with incredible reverence and righteous fear. Like, fear is okay. He's scary. I reckon he's scary. He is. He's God. He's Jesus. He's the King. But in his presence, hearts lift up with joy and celebration. That's before time, before creation, and before Christmas. Jesus existing, all of creation worshipping and honouring him. And then the book of Philippians tells us he left it all behind. He left it. Philippians 2, verses 6 to 7. It says, though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave, and he was born as a human being when he appeared in human form. He gave up everything. All that he was in heaven, he let go. Disciple John describes it like this. He says, the one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He came into the very world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. Verse 14, so the Word became human and made his home among us. Like, what a sentence. Like the word, that King that we just described, we just pictured in our minds that Jesus, who has the whole of creation bowing to him, he made his home among us. Lost my spot. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. John, that's John the Baptist, testified about him when he shouted to the crowds, this is the one I was talking about when I said, someone is coming after me who is far greater than I am, for he existed long before me. Jumping to verse 18, no one has ever seen God but the unique one, who is God himself, is near to the Father's heart and has revealed God to us. That is just so brilliant. Like this Jesus coming and being in our world. And what did he choose to come as? He came as a baby. So no wonder, like, heaven just went absolutely crazy at his birth. And the angels burst out of heaven and, filled the skies, proclaiming his glory, worshipping, and just going crazy. Like, no wonder these random men from the east travelled with ridiculously expensive gifts to lay at the feet of a baby in a stable with nothing, because the whole of creation, there's this sense that something's going on that is far bigger than maybe what the people right at the moment could even see. But the rest of creation had to respond because this is Jesus coming down. And so on earth, he became known actually as the servant king. But now, we kind of drop the royal bit. And we just kind of picture Jesus as a bit of a servant. Because the world's reduced him to a good man. Just a good man, did good things. He's an honest carpenter. It was nice. Jesus was very nice. It's safe to think him that way. Like, that's easy. If Jesus is nice, if he's honest, if he's good, then I don't have to do anything because it doesn't challenge me in any way whatsoever. If I give him a little bit more, if I add that title back to him, if I give him back king, then I might have to respond differently. And that nice picture of Jesus that we have, the nice baby, the nice man that does nice things. Do you mind if I shake it up a little bit? Do you mind? Because you know that word that our lovely Bibles use, servant, translated servant? It's actually probably better translated as slave. And, you know, it came through as slave in our Philippians verse. It says he took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. But when you think of that servant king or a slave king, it kind of puts him at the bottom of the rung. And you know, in Bible times, a slave, like, it had two parts to it. A slave was a worker, and a slave was obedient. They did what they were told. And I actually don't see Jesus being a slave to any person in the world. He didn't bow down to anyone. He didn't listen to anyone. He did things to bless people, but he was not obedient to people. There was no human directive that he followed. He was not working for people. And it's a really important distinction, and it shakes us up a little bit. Because Jesus, who is a servant, comes and fills my needs. He does what I want him to do. I speak and he listens. And I'm in control. My servant Jesus will just fix everything I want. But the only person Jesus listened to was his Father. It was his Father who gave him direction. He was not the slave to the needs of people. He was a slave to the gospel. He was a slave to the mission that he came to fulfill. That's what he worked tirelessly for. He loved his people. He loved the humans that he created. His heart poured out to them, but he was not a slave to them. His heart poured out because he was completely sold out to the mission to set them free, to save them. Nothing and no person would change his focus. You know, when he said he has to go to Jerusalem, and Peter, his disciple, someone, says, no. He goes, get behind me. That's not part of my deal. I won't listen to you. I am listening to my Father in heaven. And in that space, in his heart sold out to his focus, to his mission, his Father, he came to save everyone who would believe in that. And he demonstrated what his kingdom looked like. It was a kingdom of blessing. Because see, Jesus, he constantly, consistently maintained his authority. He had the authority to describe what heaven looked like. through all those parables and stories and, gathering the children to him. He had the authority to say, this is what heaven is, because I've been there. And he had the authority to invite people to come to that place, to say, my house has many rooms and I will prepare one for you. He had the authority to invite us into that space with him. He was completely secure in who he was as the Son of God. And so he could go and wash someone's feet. He could bow down and wash feet. And then he could have expensive perfume poured on him. And it didn't change how he acted. It didn't change how he saw himself. It didn't change who he was. He could ride on a donkey and have people laying down branches and saying, Hosanna, David. And then he could stay silent and maintain complete authority in the situation, all through his crucifixion and torture. So much so, they're hanging on that cross. The Romans they are compelled to write a sign that said King of the Jews. And when they were challenged to change it, to say he said, make it say says King of the Jews, said no, that's what it is, because he's the King. On earth, Jesus still held the wonder of the King. And now, he's seated at God's right hand in heaven. Revelation 5, verse 11 to 15. It says, then I looked again, and I heard the voices of thousands and millions of angels around the throne, and of the living beings and the elders. And they sang in a mighty chorus, worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. And then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea, and they sang, blessing and honor and glory and power belong to the one sitting on the throne and to the Lamb forever and ever. That is the picture in heaven. That is what is going on right now. That hasn't stopped since Jesus sat on that throne as the sacrifice given for the salvation of all mankind. That is what has been going on in heaven and will not ever cease. This is the King that we worship and we honor at Christmas. Philippians 2, the King that humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. Therefore, God elevated him to the place of highest honor and gave him the name above all other names, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Our King is not stuck in a manger. He is not a helpless baby. He is not a doormat for people. He is not someone for humans to trample on and expect him to do their wishes. He is not left hanging on a cross either. Our King is victorious over death. He is the worthy of the highest honor. He is Jesus, the King of kings and Lord of lords, and that is the only response that we can have as humans, to bow down at his name. That's all we can do, is to bow down at his name. And this morning, you know what? That's all I've got for you to take away. That's all I've got for you to take away. And right now, Jeff is going to lead us in a moment of communion and worship of our King.